dust. The reign of the rose is ended. The sky is overcast. The whole world is filled with sadness. From city and jungle rise the cry of lives, suffering children. The daylight slowly dies. Our Lord, look with love and pity upon every living being, from the lowliest child of nature to the mightiest crown king. For hatred, delusion, passion still claim and enslave us all, and each alike on the wheel of change must suffer, rise and fall. 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪𝓂 though every love knows pain, he who faithfully walks the path will not look for help in vain. The law of the 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷 forever will light the way. It is our moon to shine by night, our sun to illume the day. In Lord Buddha we take our refuge, His law of good our guide, to pilot as we toss and drift on beings remorseless tide, with the Dharma's light to steer by. Someday we'll fear rocks no more, but merit one, each one more his barge on Nirvana's changeless shore.
𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪 and a very good morning, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. Welcome to the weekly Sunday Pūjā in Unison and Dhamma Sharing Online, an initiative of the TBCM Council of Malaysia. It's really good to see all of you once again on this online platform. Today is the 11th of January 2026. To begin today's Puja, shall I invite Sister Doris to read out the offerings in English.
Thank you, Brother Terence. 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪, a very good morning to all brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. It is a great blessing to be able to come today for Sunday morning puja and to review our precepts. Let us compose our mind and reflect on the meaning of the virtual offerings that we shall make with full respect to our blessed teacher, the Buddha. Offerings of lights. May we offer these candles burning brightly out of deep respect and veneration to our enlightened master, the Buddha. May these lights symbolically guide us to the light of the Dhamma, which dispels the darkness of greed with the light of generosity, the gloominess of hatred with the light of love, the darkness of ignorance with the light of wisdom, through the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Offering of joss sticks and incense. May we offer these joss sticks and incense out of deep respect and veneration to our blessed master, the Buddha. May the fragrance of these joss sticks and incense be pleasing unto the gods and devas. May our good deeds be like the fragrance of these joss sticks, cultivating compassion, patience, tolerance, understanding, and love towards all living things. Offering of water. May we offer this clean and clear water to symbolize our aspiration to cultivate the virtues of calmness, clarity, and purity. Let it remind us to diligently cleanse ourselves of our spiritual defilements and delusion through the cultivation of generosity, compassion, and wisdom. Offering of flowers. These flowers too we offer out of deep respect and gratitude to our compassionate master, the Buddha. These flowers, sweet, beautiful, and choice, are clustered at the feet of our noble master. Beautiful as they are now, they will soon, with passing of time, wilt and fade and be casted away. Reflecting thus on this very nature of unsatisfactoriness, impermanence, and soullessness, let us tread the path shown by the Buddha for the removal of suffering here and now. So let us start today's puja chanting by giving salutation to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha by saying sadhu 3 times. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Adinnadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Kamesu miccācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Surameraya majja pamadatthana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Itipiso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho Vijja charana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhammasarati sattha deva manussanang buddho bhagavati Swakato bhagavata dhammo sandittiko akaliko ehipassiko opanayiko paccattang vedittabbo vinyuhiti. Supatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Ujupatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Nyaya patipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Samici patipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Yadidang cattari purisa yugani Atta purisa puggala Esa bhagavato savaka sangho อาหุเนโยพาหุเนโยดักขิเนโยอัญจลิการณีโยอนุตตรังปุญญเคตังโลกัสสาติ
วันดามิเจติยัมสัพบังสัพปตานิสุปฏิติตังสาวิริกดาตุมหาโบธิมบุดารุปังสักลัมสดายัสสะมูเลนิสินโนวาสัพบาริวิจายัมมะคาปัตโตสัมปัญญุตังสัตตาวันดีตังโบธิปาลปังอิเมเตมหาโบธิโลกนาเตนะปูจิตาอะหังปิเตนะมัสสามิโบธิราจานะมัตตุเตกานาสารับปดิตเตนะดีเปนะตมะดังสีนาติโลกดีปังสัมบุตดังปูจายามิตามอนุดังกันดสัมบารายุตเตนะดูเปนะหังสุกันดีนาปูจาเยปูจานียังทังปูจาบาจานะมุตตมังอดิวาเสตุโนบันเตปานิยังปาริกัปปิตังอนุคัมปังอุปาดายปฏิกันหาตุมุตตมังอดิวาเสตุโนบันเตโบจานังปาริกัปปิตังอนุคัมปังอุปาดายปฏิกันหาตุมุตตมังอดิวาเสตุโนบันเตกิลานะปัจจยังอิมังอนุคัมปังอุปาดายปฏิกันหาตุมุตตมังวันดกันดากุโนเปตังเอตังคุสุมาสันตติงปูจายามิมุนินตัสสะสิริปาดสาโรรุเฮปูเจมิบุตดังคุสุเมนะเนนะปุญเยนะเมเตนะจะโหตุมกขังอุปังมิลายาติยัตถาอิดังเมกายโยทัตตายาติวินาสบาวังอากาสัตตาจะบุมมัตถาเดวานากามหิตดิคาปุญญังตัมมโนโมดิตวาจิรัมรักกันตุโลกสาสนังอาคาสัตตาจะบุมมัตถาเดวานากามหิตดิคาปุญญังธัมมนุโมดิตวาจิรัมราคาตุเดสานังอาคาสัตตาจะบุมมัตถาเดวานากามหิตติคาปุญญังธัมมนุโมดิตวาจิรัมราคาตุมัมปารังติเดโววัสสตุกาเลนะสัสสะสัมปาติเหตุเชปิโตภาวตุโลโกเชราจาภาวันตุดัมมิโกอิดังเมญาตินังโหตุสุขิตาโหตุญาทายโยอิดังเมญาตินังโหตุสุขิตาโหตุญาทายโยอิดังเมญาตินังโหตุสุขิตาโหตุญาทายโยอิมินาปุญญคัมเมนะมาเมบาลสัมมากัมโมสตังสัมมากัมโมโหตุยาวานิบานะปัตติยากายเยนะวาจาจิต เตนะปะมาเดนะมายากตังอัจฉยังคามะเมบันเตบุริปัญญตตากตากายเย วัจจาจิตเตนะปะมาเดนะมายากตังอัจฉยังคามะเมดัมมาสันดิตติกากาลิกากายเยนะวาจาจิตเตนะปะมาเดนะมายากตังอัจฉยังคามะเมสังฆาสุปฏิปันนาอนุตตราการณียมัตตกุสเลนะยันตังสันตังปะดังอภิสมิจฉาสักโกอุยูจะสุยูจะสุวัจโจจะสมุดุอนาติมานีสันตุสักโกจะสุบาโรจะอัปปกิจโจจะสัลลาหุกวุตติสันตินตริโยจะนิปักโกจะอัปปะกะโบโกเลสุวานานุกิตโดนาจักขุดดัมสมาจาเรกินจีเยนะวินยูปาเรอุปาวเดยุมสุขิโนวาเคมิโนหนตุสัพเบสัตตาบาวันตุสุขิตัตตาเยเกจิปานะบุตตัตติตัสสาวาทาวราวานาวเสสาดีกาวาเยมหันตาวามัจจิมารัสสกานุกัตุลาดิทธาวาเยวะอดิทธาเยชดูเรวสันติอวิดูเรบูทาวาสัมภเวสีวาสัพเบสัตตาบาวันตุสุขิตัตตานาปโรปารัมนิคุปเบธานาติมัญเยตกัตตชินังกันจีเบียโรสนาปฏิกสัญญานาญมัญญสดุกมิเชยมาตายธานิยัมพุตตัมอายุสาเอกพุตตมนุรักเคเอวัมปิสัพพะภูเตสุมานัสสังบาวะเยปริมาณังเมตตัญจะสัพพะโลกัสมิงมานัสสังบาวะเยปริมาณังอุดดัมอโดจติริยัญเชสัมบาดัมอเวรัมนัสปัตตังติตังจารังนิสินโนวาสยาโนวายาวตัสสะวิกตมิดโดเอตังสติมอดิเตยบรหมเมตตังวิหารังอิดามาหุดิตตินเจอนุปกัมมสีลวาดัสสเนนะสัมปันโนกาเมสุเบเนยเกดัมนาหิจาตุกัปปะเสยัมปุนาเรติติเอเตนะสัจจวัจเจนะสดติเตโหตุสัพพดาเอเตนะสัจจวัจเจนะสดติเตโหตุสัพพดาเอเตนะสัจจวัจเจนะโสติเตโหตุสัพพดา By this declaration of the truth, may you all be safe at all times. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very much, Doris, for today's Sunday Pūjā chanting. Back with us after a long time, we have Brother Ānanda Fong to share on part 1 of the life of the Buddha. Over to you, Brother Ānanda.
Good morning. Thank you, Brother Terence. Okay. Happy New Year to everyone. Some of you may be wondering why I'm sharing the life of the Buddha, of course, part 1 and part 2 again. partly because we are entering a new year, and this is just a reminder for those in preparation for our important commemoration, celebration, observance this coming May, Vesak Day, of course. So this is a period in which we can recollect aspects of the life of the Buddha leading up to Vesak. Now, for those who are interested in the what they call the canonized details of the life of the Buddha, these are some of the books. In fact, all three are the same, only different covers. The Life of the Buddha, according to the Pali Canon, researched by and written by 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪𝓂 𝓟𝓾𝓷𝓪, the British monk. This page describes the sources, the common sources of the life of Buddha, which most of us are familiar. Buddha Charita is one of the earliest full biography, basically a poem. But the important thing is that it was written in the 1st century Common Era, or 1st century CE. It means many, many hundreds of years after the Buddha has passed away. And of course, the most popular one, Lalita Vistara, the next oldest biography, basically a Mahayana or Sarvastivada version written around the 3rd century Common Era. Now, Lalita Vistara is the most common version taught in many Sunday Dhamma schools, in many Buddhist viharas or temples, and even depicted in carvings in the Borobudur monastery. And after that is of the Mahavastu from the Mahāsangika 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓷 tradition, written around the 4th century Common Era. Notice all three here, the Buddha Charita, Lalita Vistara Sutra, Mahavastu, and of course there are others. This is not an exhaustive list. All these are written many hundreds of years after the Buddha has passed away. You will notice that as you go through and you compare the narrative given in these various accounts compared to the Sutta, that means the Pali Canon itself, there is a lot of additional material in these texts. Sometimes I will use the term romanticize. There's all additional information. This page talks about shows a little bit of information regarding Borobudur. Everybody talks about Borobudur. Basically, it's a 9th century Mahayana Buddhist temple in the Magelang Regency in central Java, Indonesia. So if you're not familiar with the stories contained in the Lalita Vistara, what happens, especially in the bottom left, you can see at the bottom panels, we have various carvings of the life of Buddha according to the Lalita Vistara Sutra. For those who are not familiar with the stories or have a capable guide that can tell you the story as given in the Lalita Vistara Sutra, basically you are just seeing stone. Okay, you wouldn't know what is going on, what the story could be. Again, Lalita Vistara is not the same as that recorded in the Pali Canon. Now, at the start of this particular morning sharing, you have my depiction of this particular Borobudur carving, which depicts the pregnant Queen Mahamaya or Maya Devi on the journey from the Sakya kingdom towards Korea. Queen Mahamaya was a Korean princess married to King 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪 from the Sakya kingdom. In ancient days, even to modern eras, even in Europe and many parts of the world, you have various royal families sending trying to promote economic cooperation and peace among various countries by marrying their children to the other countries. So you find even in European countries, many of the royalties, ex-royalties from the various countries, they are somehow related. In this particular depiction, it's quite common in those days that the pregnant lady, almost about to give birth, she was what we call balik kampung, go back to her home country or hometown to give birth to the coming child. So in this case, Queen Mahamaya was on a journey to the Sakya kingdom, further up to further north in Korea in the Himalayan mountains. So as she was journeying, she stopped by this 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷 garden. So here is a general map that shows the 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷 kingdom, and further northeast of the 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷 kingdom is the 𝓤𝓷𝓲 kingdom, further up north in the Himalayas. So as mentioned, she stopped by this Lumbini garden, having found it was very, very peaceful. She wanted to take a rest. And it was at this particular location where she felt the pangs of birth coming upon her. And this is a typical artistic rendition of the birth scene in which Queen Mahamaya is standing up, right hand holding on the sal tree branch. And while in the standing position, she gave birth to the prince. Now, you have many other renditions, other artistic drawings, carvings, and what they call stone carvings, wood carvings, and so on that show this particular scene. And of course, this particular scene is quite a romanticized version. You can see immediately after the birth, you see the Prince Siddhartha, the young baby, walking a few steps, and at the end of it, said some words. This is rather controversial, but nevertheless, it's very common in the Buddhist community when you see this particular scene. Now, important thing is, while growing up, you have scenes on the top left, when you're of a certain age, since the prince was born into the warrior caste. In ancient India, we have the caste system, the 4 castes. The second caste, the warrior caste, basically they are the kings and princes. Kings, why? They govern the country, they provide the military protection of the country, and so on. So belonging to the Kshatriya caste, Prince Siddhartha was expected to learn, or rather he was trained in all the military arts of archery, wrestling, spear throwing, riding horses, and so on. This particular scene on the top left shows a scene in which he and the cousin 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷 was outside. 𝓤𝓷𝓷𝓷 saw a swan flying by, and using his arrow, he shot it down. And Prince Siddhartha, together with 𝓤𝓷𝓷𝓷, ran towards the fallen swan. And Prince Siddhartha reached the swan first and found that it was still alive despite the arrow having injured it. He pulled out the arrow and tried to soothe the swan, the injured swan. So, further 2 pictures, you can see artistic renderings that show the similar scene. Commonly in Dhamma schools, we call it the swan incident. Of course, an argument ensued between Prince Siddhartha and the Prince 𝓤𝓷𝓷𝓷 about the ownership of the injured swan. And they both agreed to take the incident, the details of the incident, to a council of wise persons in the Second Kingdom, in which they ruled that if the swan was dead, then the carcass would belong to 𝓤𝓷𝓷𝓷. But since Prince Siddhartha tried to save it, the injured swan belongs to under the care of Prince Siddhartha, who nursed it, and the swan healed marvelously. Now, at around age of 16, very common in those days, and of course, the king haven't been given some warnings during the birth of Prince Siddhartha about his possibly becoming either a great king or a great teacher based on his time of birth, place of birth, birthmarks on his body, and so on. So the king decided to put further obstacles in front of the prince, and it was also a custom in those days that you marry off the daughter or the son at a very young age. By today's standards, it's not acceptable, but in those days, it was quite common. So Prince Siddhartha was, shall we say, given a choice to select a suitable bride at the age of 16. And when he chose Princess Yasodhara, his future father-in-law had doubts about the prince because he was brought up in a great lap of luxury, despite him having gone through military training and so on, and decided to, what they call, hold a contest among the various warrior princes. The top right shows an archery contest in which the prince chose a very, very stiff or heavy poundage bow to be able to shoot the target, which he succeeded. Of course, included in the contest, including horse riding and many other contests. many other challenging feats in which he was the stories narrated that he was superior to all the other contestants. Since he won the contest and proved to his future father-in-law that he was capable of managing his own, the future father-in-law agreed to the marriage of his daughter, Princess 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷, which to Prince 𝓤𝓷𝓲 depicted at the bottom of the page, the artistic rendition. Now, the bottom right particular painting is of great importance. When the prince was still very, very young, the king, in his kingly duties, he had to launch the ploughing festival when the rain started coming, and the king was down the fields together with the farmers in the mud and trying to plough the fields with the buffalo pulling the plough. Meanwhile, the young prince, together with his the maids, the carers, set up a small tent at the foot of a tree, is supposedly taking care of the prince. But during the height of the ploughing festival, the maidens had stole away for a short while to catch a glimpse of the king's ceremony. Now, this particular ceremony is known as the ploughing festival, but in which the young prince was seated, and it was the indication that he was meditating. And this particular scene is very important, in which later on, when the 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷 and the prince had renounced, became 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷, he would recall this particular incident. Of course, after the ploughing festival, the king came and was surprised to see a young boy seated in a meditative posture, deep in meditation, and he gave a salutation. You can see the artistic rendition that he was saluting to the prince. Now, this meditation was key to the Bodhisattva's or 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓪's enlightenment later on. Now, as the young prince grew up before his marriage and all that, or rather after his marriage, the prince had confronted his father that since he was a prince, he's mentioned that he had not seen his kingdom. In a way, the prince was a captive, a prisoner in his own palace. The father was trying to prevent him from going out to see the common sights that we are all accustomed to, the sights of old age, sickness, death, and so on. Having convinced his father that he would succeed his father to be the king of the kingdom, the father reluctantly allowed him to go out, but made sure that he sent his servants to clean up the whole streets and make sure that these foresights were not present, as he was forewarned. Nevertheless, the prince went out with 𝓤𝓷, the charioteer. On the top left, you can see him accidentally coming across an old person. The bottom left posture, he saw an old man. He also, on the top right, he saw what you call a dead body. And the last bottom right, he saw a recluse. This is not a Buddhist monk because there was no Buddha at the time. It was just a recluse in ancient India. At that time, there was a kind of dissatisfactoriness among the lay people against Brahmanism. Now, that was the religion prevalent at that time. There was no Hinduism during the Buddha's time. So the Prince 𝓤𝓷𝓲 and the common people in those days were not Hindus. Hinduism arose after the Buddha had passed away, and Hinduism developed from Brahmanism, which relied heavily on the Vedas and Upanishads, and incorporated some elements of Buddhism, Jainism, and other local philosophies during the Buddha's time. So Hinduism is younger than Buddhism in the first place. So the idea that the Buddha took elements of Hinduism, incorporated to Buddhism, is ridiculous. Now here, I would like to remind most Buddhists who should be familiar that Buddhism, if you are looking for Buddhist scriptures, they are found in the 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷, 𝓤 meaning tree, 𝓤𝓷𝓲 meaning baskets, comprising of the Vinaya 𝓤𝓷𝓲, Sutta 𝓤𝓷𝓲, and the Abhidhamma 𝓤𝓷𝓲. And it's written in the language called Pali, which essentially contains many dialects, but commonly the scholars will just call it Magadhi. but technically it will contain many dialects prevalent in northern India. The Buddha walked from the eastern portion of India, the northern India, to the western portion. Over the long stretch, I'm sure there are many variations to those dialects spoken in those regions. Why am I showing this particular page? Why? Because in the study or looking at the lectures given by the Buddha, they are contained in this so-called 3 baskets, the British scriptures, and life to Buddha aspects are contained here in also. So your references should be to that. Now, future slides, I will show you some excerpts of the romanticized versions of Life to Buddha, together with some aspects taken from the Pitakas, okay, the Buddhist scriptures, if they are available. So the earlier stories I've narrated does not, or rather is not contained in the Tipitaka at all. So these are from the romanticized versions written several hundred years after the Buddha had already passed away. Now, this particular page gives the excerpt from a particular sutta, the Mahasajjaka Sutta, contained in the Sutta Pitaka. Mahasajjaka Sutta is found in the Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 36. The reference at the bottom, the sutta name together with the coding, which Nikaya or collection to contain the Sutta Pitaka, gives you an ability to later, after this morning sharing, to actually go through your search engine, look for this sutta in whichever language suits you, in Chinese, in Tibetan, in English, and so on, and even in Korean, to read up the sutta in full. Here, I'm only giving you an excerpt. So this particular portion of the sutta says, when I was still an unawakened bodhisattva. Now, a bodhisattva, clearly in this particular portion of the sutta, says that when you use the word bodhisattva, the idea of a bodhisattva that is enlightened is wrong. The word bodhisattva means somebody, a human being, a being seeking enlightenment. So the word bodhisattva automatically points to a person who is not awakened, not a Buddha. So when the bodhisattva becomes enlightened, the word bodhisattva does not apply to that individual at all. That person either becomes an arahat or a Buddha, Sammasambuddha in this case. So the Buddha recalled that when I was still an unawakened bodhisattva, the thought occurred to me, household life is confining, a dusty path. Life gone forth is the open air. It isn't easy living in a home to practice the holy life totally perfect, totally pure, holy shell. What if I, having shaved off my hair and beard and putting on the old robe, were to go forth from the household life into homelessness? So in this particular sutta, this except this portion indicate that he has been doing a lot of reflection, and he felt that staying in the palace or the household life was of no use. And the sutta continues. So at a later time, when I was still young, black-haired, endowed with the blessings of youth, in the first stage of life, means he was still young, having shaved off my hair and beard. So right in the palace, he shaved off his hair and beard, though my parents wished otherwise and were grieving with tears on their faces. So the romanticized version says that he stole and ran away from the palace in the middle of the night, and so on. But the sutta says otherwise. The sutta clearly here states that he shaved off his hair and beard, and his parents, in other words, King Sudodana, his father, and Queen Mahamaya had already passed away 7 days after his birth. He was taken care by Queen Mahamaya's sister, Mahapajapati Gautami. So his parents wished otherwise and were grieving with tears on their faces. So they were very much aware when he left the palace. I put on the robe and went forth from the home life into homelessness. Having gone forth in search of what might be skillful, ... he journeyed some distance and he went to Alarakalam. and on arrival said to him, "Friend Kalama, I want to practice in this doctrine and discipline." There are two important messages here. Why 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷? Is because he had, it's quite commonsensical. In fact, we ourselves would do it. If we are searching for something, we would go and look for a teacher. So in this case, he had obtained information that 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷 was a well-known and very accomplished teacher in those days, at least referred to him by other ascetics. And number two, the last line, he mentioned to 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷, Kalama being his family name. I want to practice in this doctrine and discipline. Doctrine and discipline. In Pali, the language of Buddha at the time, would mean Dhamma Vinaya. Okay, Dhamma meaning doctrine, Vinaya meaning discipline, the discipline of how to practice the doctrine. Now, all teachers, whether Buddhist or not, during the time of Buddha, refer to their so-called community or discipline as doctrine and discipline, or Dhamma Vinaya. So if anybody uses the word Dhamma Vinaya, you should ask the question, whose Dhamma Vinaya, whose doctrine and discipline? Is it 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷 and other teachers? If you say Buddha Gautama's Dhamma Vinaya, then you're referring to the Buddha. Okay, so there is a very important difference here. And the romanticized versions indicated that Prince Siddhartha summoning Channa to round up his horse Kantaka, to run away from the palace in the middle of the night, cross the river Ānanda. So this is an artistic rendition. Of course, the prince on top, saddled on the white horse Kantaka, with Channa at the back, jumping across the river Ānanda at the age of 29 years. So the prince renounced from the palace at the age of 29 years. Here is an interesting artistic carving from the Boro carvings, crossing of river Ānanda on Kantaka with Channa. Now, if I've not already mentioned, Boro carvings basically show the stories from the Lalita Vistara Sutra. Now, Prince Siddhartha is indicated to be on the horse, which is at the left portion of this carving. The prince sitting on the horse, and Channa right at the tail. All the other beings at the bottom and at the top and so on are supposed to be unseen beings, probably devas, supporting his renunciation. And after crossing river Ānanda, the artistic rendition shows that he cut off his hair, gave his princely clothes over to Channa to return to the palace, and the Prince Siddhartha put on the white and old robe. Now, from this time onwards, that means upon renunciation, we technically should not refer to this person as the Buddha. Buddha means a person as enlightened, and you cannot refer to him as a prince because he already renounced the princely life. So from this time onwards, this person, the Bodhisattva, should be referred to as the ascetic Gautama. He has renounced the princely life, so he's an ascetic, but yet he's not enlightened. So he can be referred to as the Bodhisattva or ascetic Gautama, not as the Buddha. So the terms like Buddha was born in Łumbini, Buddha shaved his head, and so on upon renunciation, causes a lot of wrong information, wrong expectation, and wrong understanding among the community, especially the Buddhist community, which implies that when he was born in Łumbini, still a baby, he is already a Buddha by referring to him as a Buddha. This is conventional usage, but technically it produces a lot of wrong understanding among the community. When he was born, he was only a Bodhisattva. He was not enlightened. So even at this stage of cutting off his hair to renounce, he was not a Buddha yet. So as indicated earlier, he went to the first teacher, 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷, and later on he went to 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷. But the key information is that he found their doctrines, their Dhamma Vinaya or doctrine and Vinaya, to be inadequate and left them. So very often you find in public or in written text by various other people, they say that, oh, the Buddha learned from 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓸𝓷 and 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪𝔂 and put his own spin into those ideas and taught his followers as his own teachings. These are technically wrong because in the suttas, the Buddha recalled having gone to these two teachers and found their doctrines inadequate. So the sutta renderings in Mahasacaka Sutta, and this is not the only sutta talking about this incident, the Buddha recalled, it was not long before I quickly learned the doctrine. That means 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓸𝓷's doctrine. And later on, he went to him and said, "Friend Kalama, is this the extent to which you have entered and dwelled in this Dhamma, having realized it for yourself through direct knowledge?" And ... indicates that 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓸𝓷 indicated that that was all he could teach. That was the highest that ascetic Gautama had learned from 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓸𝓷. And the Buddha recalled, "So dissatisfied with that Dhamma, I left." So this is a clear indication that although ascetic Gautama learned everything that 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓸𝓷 could teach, he was dissatisfied. So 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓸𝓷 couldn't teach him the way to enlightenment. And after that, he went to 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪, the second famous teacher. Now, just a short note, interesting, Ramaputa means the son of Rama. The actual teacher 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪 referred to here is actually the son of the famous teacher who was very well attained. And 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪 was maintaining the congregation founded by his father, and also found the doctrine. The Bodhisattva or ascetic Gautama found 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪's father's doctrine inadequate also and left him. Since both famous teachers at that time, the teachings were inadequate, the ascetic Gautama decided to go and practice the so-called the in idea in those days, which is asceticism. And he did this for 6 years. So sometimes you see artistic rendition showing these kind of pictures, what they call a person meditating at the foot of a tree and skin and bone. This person is not the Buddha. You must note that this is not Buddha. He is not enlightened. He is ascetic Gautama, still in his practice seeking enlightenment. And this is the Boro version that shows the ascetic Gautama practice asceticism with the 5 ascetics. The 5 ascetics in Pali referred to as the Pancavaggiya, Pancha, P-A-N-C-A, meaning 5, Vaggiya ascetics. The Pancavaggiya consisting of Kondanya, Asaji, Pandya, Vapa, and Mahanama. These 5 are very, very important. And the oldest among them, Kondanya. Kondanya was one of the wise Brahmins who were present during Prince Siddhartha when he was just a baby, having come back from Lumbini garden. The father organized a naming ceremony in which he invited several well-known Brahmins to the palace to check the time of birth, place of birth, birthmarks, and so on, and propose the names and predict what would become of this Prince Siddhartha when he grew up. Kondanya was youngest among them and was present. So here already, when Prince Siddhartha renounced and became ascetic Gautama, 29 years later, Kondanya by then was already very, very old. Asaji, Pandya, Vapa, and Mahanama were some of the children of the Brahmins present during the naming ceremony. Kondanya managed to persuade these 4 to join him to be near ascetic Gautama and support him in his quest to gain enlightenment. And when he gained enlightenment, hopefully these 5 ascetics will be the first to receive the teachings by this by the Buddha. Now, how did ascetic Gautama practice? The thought occurred to me How delightful in this countryside, inspiring forest growth, clear flowing river, and villages for alms doing on all sides. This is just right for the striving of a clansman intent on striving. So I sat down right there thinking, this is just right for striving. I thought, suppose that I, clenching my teeth and pressing my tongue against the roof of my mouth, were to beat down, constrain, and crush my mind with my awareness. So, clenching my teeth, pressing my tongue against the roof of my mouth, and so on. Again, this is extracted from the 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷𝓷 Sutta. So, this was the start of his ascetic practice. Now, from another sutta, the 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷 Sutta from Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 12, there's further information given about how he practiced asceticism, the Buddha recalled. I took food once a day, once every 2 days, ... There was other iterations. Once every 7 days, up to once every fortnight. I was an eater of greens or millet or wild grass or grass or cow dung. So ascetic Gautama even ate cow dung. I live on forest roots and fruits. I fed on fallen fruits. I clothe myself in hemp mixed cloth, in shrubs, in refuse rags, in tree bark. So these were some of the ascetic practices which he went through. Notice I have a lot of ... overstatements. So to know the full range of his ascetic practice, we should refer to the 𝓤𝓷𝓲𝓷 Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 12. I would go on all fours to the cow pens, and I would feed on the dung of the young suckling calves. As long as my own excrement and urine lasted, I fed on my own excrement and urine. Chilled by night, scorched by day, alone in the awe-inspiring groves, naked, no fire to sit beside, sage yet pursues his quest. I would make my bed in the charnel ground, with the bones of the dead for a pillow. Now, what is interesting here is in the box in the center, the beige color box, alone in awe-inspiring groves. These are forest groves. Why are they termed awe-inspiring? Because they are very frightening. When you stay there alone in the middle of the night, there are a lot of noises and sounds that make a person's hair stand. And many monks during the Buddha's time tried to go to these kind of groves. And since they were not enlightened, they will encounter a lot of challenges too. And fear would typically arise in such persons. Now, the bottom portion that's mentioned, I would make my bed in the charnel ground. Charnel grounds are, in modern day, we call it cemeteries. But in the modern cemetery, it's very, shall we say, very systemized. Why? Because they typically dig 6 feet of depth and put the coffin in, bury the loved one, the dead loved one. Charnel grounds in ancient India do not have that procedure. A person has passed away, the family may wrap the body in white cloth, send it to this kind of charnel grounds. If they are rich enough, they buy firewood, not just firewood, maybe sandalwood and other quality wood to cremate the bodies. Okay, those who are from poorer families who leave their loved ones, the body in this ground unburied. What happens? The animals will come and eat the body. So leaving behind bones and so on. So those were the ancient charnel grounds. So the Bodhisattva of ascetic Gautama used bones of the dead as pillows. So I thought, suppose I were to take only a little food at a time, only a handful of bean, lentil, veg, or pea soup. So I took only a little food at a time, only a handful of time of bean soup, lentil soup, veg soup, or pea soup. So with this kind of diet restriction, obviously the Bodhisattva recalled, my body became extremely emaciated simply from eating so little. My limbs became like the jointed segments of vine stems, of bamboo stems. My backside became like a camel's hoof. My spine stood out like a string of beads. My ribs jutted out like the jutting breasts of an old round-down barn. Again, the bottom left picture indicates a typical rendition of ascetic Gautama. Note, this is not the Buddha. This is ascetic Gautama, still striving for enlightenment. Skin and bone, and you can count his ribs, and he has no belly. And this is some of the famous quotes from the Buddha recalling his days as ascetic Gautama at the height of his ascetic practices. The gleam of my eyes appeared to be sunk deep in my eye sockets, like the gleam of water deep in a well. My scalp shriveled and withered like a green bitter gourd, shriveled and withered in the heat and the wind. The skin of my belly became so stuck to my spine that when I thought of touching my belly, I grabbed hold of my spine as well. When I thought of touching my spine, I grabbed hold of the skin of my belly as well. If I urinated or defecated, I fell over on my face right there, simply from my eating so little. If I tried to ease my body by rubbing my limbs with my hands, the hair rooted at its roots fell from my body as a rub, simply from eating so little. Okay, this is from the 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪 Sutta. So these are some of the artistic renditions, in this case, statues made. And yet again, I like to emphasize, this is not of the Buddha. This is ascetic Gautama at the height of his ascetic practices. And as the Buddha recalled of his past practices, whatever Brahmans or contemplatives in the past have felt painful feelings due to their striving, this is the utmost. None have been greater than this. So clearly he's saying that the practitioners of the past, or having gone through these severe ascetic practices, none have gone greater than this. So he has pushed it, the ascetic Gautama has pushed it to this extent compared to the past practitioners. Whatever Brahmans in the future will feel painful, etc., none will be greater than this. And whatever Brahmans in the present are feeling painful feelings and so on, none is greater than this. So the past, future, and present practitioners, compared to his own practices, he declares that none is greater than this. But with this racking practice of austerities, I haven't attained any superior human state, any distinction in knowledge and or vision worthy of the noble ones. And in the yellow box, an important question arose when he had pushed all these ascetic practices to the extreme. He wondered, could there be another path to awakening? First, he had learned from 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓷. He practiced according to the Dhamma Vinaya of 𝓤𝓾𝓷𝓷 and found them inadequate. Then he went to 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪 and learned and practiced the Dhamma Vinaya of 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪 and found that inadequate. Then he went about 6 years of practicing the so-called the popular ascetic practices of the day. Everybody was saying, oh, this is the way to enlightenment. And he pushed it to the extreme. I would dare say that ascetic Gautama nearly died because of all these practices. And then the doubt occurred to him. Could there be another path to awakening? I recall once when my father, the 𝓤𝓾, was working and I was sitting in the cool place of the rose apple tree. Remember the plowing festival? And the artistic rendition, the bottom left, indicates the father holding the plow and the young prince supposedly surrounded by some palace nurses taking care of the young boy, and he was, shall we say, meditating under the shade of a cool rose apple tree. So continuing from the 𝓤𝓷𝓭𝓪𝓂 Sutta, then quite secluded from sensuality, secluded from unskillful mental qualities, I entered and remained in the first jhana. Jhana being a notation of a depth of deep tranquility and or concentration. And the qualities of the first jhana: rapture and pleasure born from seclusion, accompanied by directed thought and evaluation. So he remembered what he had practiced underneath the rose apple tree when he was a young boy. And ascetic Gotama now said, could that be the path to awakening? So clearly, this was a different kind of practice compared to the 𝓤𝓷𝓭𝓪𝓂 𝓟𝓾𝓷𝓭𝓪 or even among the 6 years of ascetic practices. This was a different path. Following on that memory came the realization. That is the path to awakening, I thought. So obviously he realized that in his severely emaciated body, and the Buddha recalled, I thought, not easy to achieve. That which he achieved underneath the rose apple tree, to achieve with a body so extremely emaciated. Suppose I will take some solid food, some rice and porridge. So I took some solid food, some rice and porridge. Now, with this realization, he went forth and continued with his Pitachara through the villages and got food to nourish his body, to strengthen his body. Now, around this time, the 5 ascetics were there trying to support him and hoping that he would gain enlightenment through these 6 years of ascetic practices to gain enlightenment. They were disappointed in ascetic Gotama and they left it because they felt that the way to enlightenment were these practices called asceticism. So, but ascetic Gotama reflected and chose to strengthen his body. So at this time when he was strengthening his body, he was alone. The 5 ascetics had left him. So through some time, through months of trying to strengthen his body, you come across this scene also frequently rendered in the Buddhist circles, the artistic tradition of this offering. The lady is Sujata offering a bowl of milk rice, specially prepared by her, offered to ascetic Gotama. Again, this picture is not of the Buddha, it's ascetic Gotama sitting underneath a banyan tree. You will see in the artistic rendition, the river flowing in the background is that of river Naranjara. Nearby is a pipal tree, which later will be the place whereby ascetic Gotama would sit underneath and gain enlightenment, transforming the pipal tree to be called a Bodhi tree. The story regarding Sujata is quite interesting. She's a rich person's daughter. The father was very rich, counted by the many herds of cows he managed. She used the milk to even rinse the rice and cook the rice in milk. And she had earlier, when she got married, she had made a vow at the foot of this banyan tree that hopefully she will bear a son. And she got her wish fulfilled. And since then, every time she would come over to this tree to make offerings to the deities at this banyan tree, fulfillment of a vow. So when the servant maid had went to the foot of the tree to sweep the leaves away, the maid found an ascetic sitting underneath, mistaking the ascetic for the tree god having come down, waiting to receive the offering from Sujata. So the maid servant went back and reported to the mistress, who came quickly with her offering, thinking that this tree deity had come down to receive, but it was actually ascetic Gotama. So as mentioned, ascetic Gotama, having finished the sumptuous meal from Sujata, came over to a nearby pipal tree, got some cut grass from the nearby grass cutter, lay a bed and sat down and started his deep meditations. Now, the artistic rendition here shows the struggle, the initial struggles. And this particular time was that of Vesak Eve, okay, the day before Vesak Day, in which the Bodhisattva or ascetic Gotama's internal defilements commenced to haunt him, together with the deity Mara coming down with his bad characters, trying to disturb the meditations of ascetic Gotama. And this particular picture of the Bodhisattva, he's still not the Buddha. It's still the Bodhisattva sitting underneath a pipal tree. And notice his right hand is pointing towards the earth, because Mara challenged as the Bodhisattva, what right had he to sit down at this particular location? And the Bodhisattva recalled that he, for many lifetimes, had been practicing to gain enlightenment, and he pointed to the planet Earth to be his witness of his many lives of struggles and practices to attain enlightenment. Okay, and the story indicated that the earth shook and frightened Mara. The deity, ran away. Yet at this location, this is still the Bodhisattva, not the. This is the oral rendition of Mara and his forces attacking the Bodhisattva. So when I had taken solid food and regained strength, and then quite secluded, I entered and remained in the first jhana, the same jhana that he attained when he was a young boy underneath the cool rose apple tree during the flowering festival. And then he progressed to the second jhana, deeper levels of tranquility or concentration, and went further to the third jhana, and I entered and remained in the fourth jhana, characterized by purity of equanimity and mindfulness, neither pleasure nor pain, but the pleasant feeling that arose in this way did not invade my mind remain. Now notice the Bodhisattva or ascetic Gotama going up to the fourth jhana. There is no mention of any deeper meditations into the what many Buddhists refer to as arupa jhanas, the formless jhanas. In which case, the idea of arupa jhanas is forwarded in the commentaries and other texts written after the Buddha had passed away. So in the normal Sutta Pitaka, you find reference to up to the fourth jhana only. Any levels higher than that are known as the arupa bases. Okay, the bases. Now in the yellow box at the bottom, the important thing. Now the Bodhisattva had already attained the fourth jhana. At this level, and the Buddha recalls, when the mind was thus concentrated, purified, bright, unblemished, rid of defilement, pliant, malleable, steady, and attained to imperturbability, I directed it to the knowledge of recollecting my past lives. Now, notice here the purpose of meditation, that of attaining jhana, and here the Buddha recalls, concentrated, purified, bright, unblemished, rid of defilement, pliant, malleable, and steady, attained to imperturbability. Now, when the mind has reached this level of purity, malleability, steadiness, and so on, then you make use of the mind to do something. Okay, so meditation is the means to an end, not the end itself. So the Buddha recalls, I directed the mind to the knowledge of recollecting my past lives. I recollected my manifold past lives. 1 birth, 2, 5, 10, 50, 100, 1,000, 100,000, many eons of cosmic contraction, many eons of cosmic expansion, many eons of cosmic contraction and expansion. Now, this portion of the 𝓢𝓾𝓷𝓲 recollection of his experiences during the 𝓢𝓾𝓷 indicate that he went so far back that the idea of where did planet Earth come from in modern day conversation becomes ridiculous. Why? The Buddha recollected that on the 𝓢𝓾𝓷 he was able to, when he recalled his past life, going beyond this cosmic contraction, that means contraction of the universe. Many eons of cosmic expansion of a universe, and many eons of universal contraction and expansion. Currently, our cosmologists, fueled by astronomical observations with modern instruments in the 21st century, have only seen an expanding universe. Our astronomers have not seen a contracting universe so far. This is how far the Bodhisattva was able to go backwards in time. Now, there I had such a name, belonged to such a clan, had such an experience. Such was my food, such my appearance, such the end of my life. Interesting, he was born in a certain family, has such an appearance. This may be humanoid, may not be humanoid. Such was my food, such my experience, and such the end of my life. So all beings born will pass away. He was no different. Passing away from that state, I re-arose there. There too, I had such a name, such the end of my life. Passing away from that state, I re-arose here. Thus, I remembered my manifold past lives in their modes and details. This is the first knowledge I attained in the first watch of the night. Now, the first watch of the night, in this case, referring to the 𝓢𝓾𝓷, typically from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. on 𝓢𝓾𝓷. Ignorance was destroyed, knowledge arose, darkness was destroyed, light arose, as happens in one who is heedful, ardent, and resolute. With the pleasant feeling that arose in this way, it did not invade my mind and remained. And then went through, I directed it to the knowledge of passing away and reappearance of beings. I saw, by means of the divine eye, purified and surpassing the human, beings passing away and reappearing, means passing away and being reborn, and I discern how they are inferior and superior, beautiful and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate, in accordance with their karma, means with their earlier actions. These beings who are endowed with bad conduct of body, speech, and mind, who revile the noble ones, held wrong views, and undertook actions under the influence of wrong views, after that have reappeared in the plane of deprivation, the bad destination, the lower realms in hell. But these beings who were endowed with good conduct of body, speech, and mind, who did not revile the noble ones, who held right views, and undertook actions under the influence of right views, after that have reappeared in good destinations in the heavenly world. Thus, by means of the divine eye, purifying and surpassing the human, I saw beings passing away and reappearing, and I discerned how they are inferior and superior, beautiful and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate, in accordance with their karma. This is the second knowledge I attained in the second watch of the night. The second watch of the night being from 10 p.m. on 𝓢𝓾𝓷 to early morning, 2 a.m. on 𝓢𝓾𝓷. So ignorance was destroyed, knowledge arose, darkness was destroyed, light arose, as happens in one who is heedful. And again, when the mind was thus concentrated, purified, right, unblemished, rid of defilement, pliant, malleable, steady, and attained to imperturbability, I directed it to the knowledge of the ending of the mental fermentations. I discern as it actually present that this is dukkha. This is the origin of dukkha. This is the cessation or ending of dukkha. This is the way leading to the ending of cessation of dukkha. These are fermentations. This is the origin of fermentations, the ending of fermentations, way leading to the cessation of fermentations. Another artistic rendition after the third watch of the night, where victory against the forces of evil. My heart, thus knowing, thus seeing, was released from the fermentation of sensuality, released from the fermentation of becoming, released from the fermentation of ignorance. With release, there was a knowledge release. In this case, he realized that he was released from all these defilements. I discern that birth is ended, the holy life is fulfilled, the task done. There is nothing further for this world. Now, this portion of the Mahasacaka Sutta, the recollection of Buddha, of what he did on early Vesak morning, is very important. Birth is ended. So anyone asking the question, where is the Buddha now? Okay, as where in the 31 planes of existence, or where in the cycle of birth and death is he? That is a wrong question. Why? Based on not knowing. The Buddha declared, in this case, he had become the Buddha. He said, birth is ended. So he's no more reborn. So this was the third knowledge I attained in the third watch of the night. Third watch of the night being from early Vesak morning at 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. on Vesak morning. Ignorance was destroyed. Knowledge arose. Darkness was destroyed. Light arose, as happens in one who is heedful, ardent, and resolute. Thus, from born as Prince Siddhartha, brought up, got married, then renounced and became ascetic Gautama, practiced for 6 long years, and also learned from 2 teachers, from which he found their doctrines inadequate, and later striving by himself, and then gaining full awakening at the age of 35 years, attained Samma Sambuddha. The word Samma, S-A-M-M-A, means perfectly, full, completely. Sambuddha, the word Buddha means to be awakened. Sam means self. So perfectly or completely self-awakened. This is yet another Borobudur carving depicting the full awakening, attainment of full awakening from Bodhisattva to Samma Sambuddha. So at Vesak Eve, before, the tree under which he sat was called the Pipa tree, a species of tree, and upon attaining Buddhahood or Samma Sambuddhahood, that tree is given an honorific title called Bodhi tree. Only that tree is called a Bodhi tree. All other similar species tree is called Pipa tree. So that's the end of part 1 of this for this morning. Sabba papasa akarana kusalasa upasampada sachitta paridapana etang buddhana sasana. The Buddhas mentioned in Dhammapada verse 1 and 3 that we should avoid all evil, do good, purify our minds. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. This verse is very, very important because if anyone were to ask you, what did the Buddha teach? This is the first go-to verse to tell them whether they are Buddhists, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, or non-believers. Okay, this summarizes very nicely. For practitioners of the Dhamma, when you wake up, this is also a good verse to go to. Why? It tells us what we should do throughout the day, that we should avoid evil, do good, and purify your minds. So with that, let me transfer back to Brother Terence for the closing.
Thank you very much, Brother Ānanda, for today's sharing on the life of the Buddha part 1. Now let's take those merits that have accrued to all beings, whether they're seen or unseen. Akasatha ca Bummatha Devanaga Mahidika Punyang Tammanumoditva Chiram Rakkantu Lokasasanang Ettavata ca Amhehi Sampadang Punya Sampadang Sabbe Deva Sabbe Bhuta Sabbe Satta Anumodantu Sabba Sampati Siddhya Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. And aspirations. Imina punya kammena mame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yavani bana pattiya sadhu sadhu sadhu. Thank you everyone for watching. For other videos, please visit the links below. Bye bye for now. See you again soon.